This is Mark Mullinax, ready for another Taoist podcast? Today we're looking at verse 78, or maybe better said, we're looking at water today and seeing what water reflects back to us. To bring an urgency to today's verse, I'm asking the question, which is also the title of this class on verse 78, what are you thirsty for? Also in today's class, I will not refer to water by the neutral pronoun it, and not refer to water as a thing. Instead, I will offer renewing pronouns to address water, like they, he, she, us, our, who, whom, and whose.
Be like water, making her way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through her. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water into a cup, she becomes the cup. If you put water into a bottle, he becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, they become the teapot. Be water, my friend. Bruce Lee, A Warrior's Journey.
Water is everywhere and essential. We know this, but we rarely live like we know this. John Muir, the great naturalist, once described raindrops in the Sierra Mountains, some landing on glacier tops, others feeding meadows, some kissing the lips of lilies. He called these drops God's messengers. Likewise, I'd like to speak of water today not just as something we use, but as a capital T teacher or model of Tao, Tao's ever-present messenger. And in some sacred writings, messengers are angels. I'm going to begin today with just a paragraph from my podcast on verse 8. What would water do? My name is water. No one prefers low places like I do. I am the diplomatic corps of Tao. Watch how I receive all by going low. Heck, I even accept pollution. The power of anything great should be like me, a delta that welcomes all things at the lowest possible point. Act like me, and you'll live. Refuse, get all brittle, and you'll break upon the rocks. For I am water. I wear down mountains. I erode all the hard places and make the rough places smooth. With me alone, the tough become tender. Like time, I wear things away. I outlast every unnatural thing. Okay, class, today I'm joined by Teresa Aeschliman. Her son Ethan joined us back in verse 38. Teresa, would you like to say a few introductory words?
Thanks for the opportunity to join you on this podcast. I'm very grateful for how accessible your translation of the Tao Te Ching has made this ancient wisdom, and it's a pleasure to be with you to discuss some of it.
Back at you. Well, let's hear verse 78, Teresa. Would you like to read it for us now?
Water's way. Nothing is more submissive and pliant than water. For overcoming the most unyielding, nothing compares. It's easy to understand how weak overcomes the most forceful, and why soft wears down hard, but few practice this. So the sage declares, those who serenely bear the nation's humiliations deserve to preside at the country's altars. Those who calmly accept the nation's disasters deserve to be its king. These truths are paradoxes, like the way of water.
Thank you, Teresa. This verse brings home one of Tao's central teachings. The softest overcomes the hardest. We'll learn all about that very soon. But first, a couple of text notes. First, a quick note for translation nerds. Some scholars think the last 4 lines of this verse may be out of place. They sure do sound like it to me. And some scholars even move them elsewhere. Today, I'm going to be focusing on the main lesson. Water teaches softness. The second text note is a word nerdery. The word water appears but 3 times in the entire Chinese text of the Tao Te Ching. Pronounced shui in Mandarin, water is a favorite way Taoists through the centuries have depicted Tao, flowing, effortless, quiet and humble, gentle, soft power, and Tao's greatest teacher. Water depicts a deep, stilled mind in repose, but also as the womb of all life. There's something spiritual afoot here now. Water is stored everywhere in nature, from clouds to reservoirs to ice. Humans, we course with water. We are ever in somebody's watershed. Water brings all that has life to life and keeps life flowing, from the smallest of flowers to the largest of trees. Nothing appears without her. Thus, Taoists say that nothing the Taoist does or does not is without understanding of the ways or Tao of water. Ancient Taoists saw water as everything we may have forgotten how to be: yielding but persistent, quiet but potent. Water holds all things, transforms all things, resists nothing, and yet it shapes mountains. Water is not some house-trained it, but an imaginative, expansive who. We know this, and yet the verse warns us, few practice this. Why is that? Maybe because we treat water, like so many things, as a resource, a means to an end, a thing, an it. We do not treat water as a living, flowing wisdom. We forget that we are water. As much as 76% of our bodies is water. And we cry, bleed, sweat, give birth, all lubricated with water. Our kidneys are virtual wetland marshes, cleansers of toxins in our own water. To forget the way of water is to forget how water takes care of us.
Only the person who knows how to rely on water's principles can act correctly. Hence, the solution for the sage who would transform the world lies in water. When water is uncontaminated, people's hearts are upright. When water is pure, people's hearts are at ease. The people's hearts being upright, their desires do not become dissolute. Their conduct is without evil. Quanzhou, a 4th century BCE Taoist.
Okay, class, think of Tao as a kind of hygiene, or Tao as an ecology based on the way of water. We might remember water as oceans and rivers, tears and saliva and sweat. But water is also grief tears, a fog, a storm, a mist. Water is mystery. Psychologists say the water is like the unconscious. Water is like a womb flowing, a womb giving birth. The question becomes, with water as alive as we claim ourselves to be, are we listening to water? What shall we learn? So let me turn to Teresa and ask anything so far, Teresa?
My thoughts go back a little bit to the first reading from Bruce Lee, and wondering, how does water teach the way through the vessel that we're in now? And not to make this super specific to time, but I think it's a cycle of time. But we seem to be in a vessel of white supremacy, genocide. How does water teach us to soften into this vessel? What does that mean? And what kind of approach change might be needed? Like, what does it mean to soften into this vessel of white supremacy?
Okay. Great question, Teresa. I mean, if you're like me, you can get hard and brittle. I've been a parent, you've been a parent. There are times when we have not done as well as we could have. I'm not asking for any examples, but we know that after something happens, that we may have been too hard, too rigid, and therefore a relationship got damaged. And so for me, can we learn from our past? Can we learn? Can we take all that bad karma and then use it as the duty of the moment to learn what we need to learn? And so that's what I'm wondering of how does water teach us? Water teaches us also by going everywhere, down into the subsoil, all the way to bedrock. It will go anywhere. It doesn't matter. It has no preconceived idea. I want to go this way instead of that way. It just has its own natural way. And so it is a good teacher of how to adapt to reality that you cannot change. And that's one thing I like about water. This teaching, showing, this modeling of how to exist without, pushing against the goads. That is to not push against things that are natural. And so that's what I'm picking up with your question is how we learn how to be soft. Has being hard ever taken us somewhere that we liked? We can be forceful to a tyrant and say, we will not accept this. Yeah, I get that. But we're doing it out of a softer appreciation and love for those who are being affected by those bad policies. Okay? And hopefully we're not denouncing that bad leader as an evil person. Now, if we have a hard edge attitude against that person as consummately evil and never a candidate for redemption or resurrection, then we have a problem. That means we've gotten too hard. So this is a difficult, hard teaching about softness. Yeah, it ain't easy. Thoughts?
Absolutely. I agree. It is not easy. It speaks to the Christian tradition of loving enemies and what does that love look like. And again, it has to have that softness to it. But I was interested to hear you bring the word resistance in that, and that and talk maybe a little bit about resistance in that context.
Resistance to injustice, or
what does that mean to you, or what do you think? How does the Tao talk into that?
I think the Taoist is an astute observer of human nature, which is not Tao's nature, but of human nature, and we can understand how people react. And to a person, I have never been able to influence somebody by being difficult or hard or saying you're wrong and I'm right. By the way, so why don't you just end all your troubles and just do it my way? That has never ever worked. Taoism takes time. Softening takes time. You put sometimes I cook something and it gets so hard on the stove that I have to leave the pan in some water overnight to be soft. Okay. Sometimes I have to do the same things with people. Okay. I just cannot assume that I can wipe or scour something clean when I first see it. It has to be, I have to adapt to the pace of water. Okay. And that means slowing down. Tao is not a shortcut. Tao is no shortcut to anything. In fact, it takes a lot longer.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, anything good takes a while. It takes a long time. Yeah. I mean, parenting, it takes a long time. To build anything good, a people, a nation, a community, a house, you just can't slapdash it. Right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So let's talk about water and justice. A few moments ago, I asked the question, are we listening to water? Some indigenous cultures already do. The Maori in New Zealand have granted the Wanganui River legal personhood. India has legally recognized the Ganges and the Yamuna rivers as living beings, referred to as alive, and with pronouns of he and she and they and who and whose and whom. Slovenia guarantees water as a human right. How would the world change to give water, or natural flora and fauna, the same space and rights as a human being? How might we soften our way too hard world? Is not a river alive? Are we not rivered within and without? Might we better confess water like we confess a deity? His, her, their extraordinary support of all life is only because water runs through all of us, making in us a shining path. But, and however, there's always Flint, Michigan, there's Standing Rock, maybe there's a local river you know, places where we ignore or conveniently forget water's sacredness, and disremember what happens when we mindlessly interrupt or even poison the softness undergirding all things, whether alive or not alive. So again, what are we thirsty for? I hope that we in this class might thirst for hope, to bring our small corner of the world to its senses, and to bring sense back into the world using the quiet practices of water. Renewal, cleaning, moistening, wearing hard places down, softening, supporting, and then, like water, disappearing. What are we thirsty for? Is it power, control, certainty, certain outcomes, or are we longing for something softer? Peace, fluidity, healing? What do you think, Teresa?
When I hear all of those words from you strung together, power, control, certainty, then peace, fluidity, and healing, I think that often, especially in our culture, we have the idea that it's we need to be thirsty for power, control, and certainty because that will lead to peace, fluidity, and healing. So I'm wondering if you could address that a little bit.
In other words, how to be less hard and more soft? Actual practices that we could do?
Yeah, actual practices would be wonderful. I would love a peek inside how you manage that.
Well, if my day begins well, I do begin with Tao Te Ching and read. Maybe somebody else's version, maybe my version, maybe a commentary, and I just sit with it. Or I'll sit with another book and another tradition, Christian, Buddhist, and just sit while the house is still and just have that open space. And then I do a scan of hard places. I do a scan of things that might come up in the day in which my blood pressure may go up. And I say, it'll be okay. You're already aware of this. It'll be okay. And then, but I have to use my experience as a way to understand others because I run across folks, sometimes it's me, who are difficult, who are hard. But if I haven't done my own scans first, if I haven't done my own reset button first, then I'm lost. I will go down the rabbit hole of, look at me, I'm powerful. Look at me, I got the right answer. Look at me, I can shout louder than you. And these are not ways to make friends or influence enemies. Thoughts?
I love that insight into your personal practices. And it's also part of mine to have a time every morning. And now that I have your book, which has been a wonderful opening of and reaffirming of a lot of things in other faith traditions. I think they all kind of have echoes within each other. It's been a really wonderful way to extend that practice for me. I also have a source that I use every morning and then also sit with a verse of yours in your translation. And it's been really transforming in a lot of ways in calming, knowing that things will be okay, like you say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've talked about practices. how can we think about water as a spiritual practice, which is the main teaching of this verse? Would you read the relevant parts of the verse again for us?
Nothing is more submissive and pliant than water. For overcoming the most unyielding, nothing compares. It's easy to understand how the weak overcomes the most forceful, and why soft wears down hard, but few practice this.
I want to focus on what you just read, Teresa, for overcoming the most unyielding. We can all think of something, someone, some place, some situation that feels like it's unyielding. And this is our test case. If Taoism is going to prove itself or demonstrate itself to us as something worthwhile, it's got to work in real time. And so I suggest that we, in our quiet times, if we have those, to figure out what's the worst possible scenario in my life, and does water and being soft have anything to do with it? And that's the thing. I mean, for example, we're both in these traditions of peace, these spiritual traditions that have peace at their core. But if we regard anybody like some president, for example, who just gets on our nerves and we allow to dominate our thoughts, is that peace? Is that natural? I begin to say, don't think so anymore. Because after I have 30 minutes with the news or 30 minutes of listening to somebody that I really don't care about, or should care more about actually, I'm not in a safe place. This path we're talking about is custom made for each person. You have to figure out how you respond, and then use the softness of water as a model for how you want to live. Okay? Because I think water does wear down hard places. In me, on rocks, even in justice. But not with force, but with persistence. Tao teaches how yielding is not weakness, but a kind of strength that includes others, like love. Like love, too, is water. Love is soft. Love expresses. Love changes people. So truly our verse reads this: for overcoming the most unyielding, nothing compares. You know as well as I do, everybody, no one has ever been convinced of anything that you want them to believe. They've never really changed their minds or hearts by us forcing them, have they? It's soft power that does this. It's subtle, behind the scenes, being quiet, and then retiring. That's how the world really changes. We know this? Yeah. Practice it? Maybe. When we can soften our hearts, our reactions, our habits, we become more available to truth, to reality. We're more able to respond rather than knee-jerk react. More likely to hear than shut things out. More likely to yield than barge on through with impatience. Softness is nothing like passivity. Softness is courage, just shape-shifting like water into another form. Tao has nothing to do with coercion. Tao is always flowing. It's service. It's yielding. It's flow, service, yielding, softening. Whatever your practice of water, we stay rooted in Tao's larger intelligence through our practices. And as I said umpteen times on this podcast, we do become exactly what we practice. This way of water, this Tao way of water, is no quick fix. Water takes time to carve the Grand Canyon. Patience gets learned from the practice of being like water. Like good parents who see their job as lasting decades. Like a good leader knows that aiming for the quick turnaround and an easy product is unrealistic. Like a good teacher on day one of the school year saying, what the heck am I going to do with all these kids? Little by little. Proper means, proper ends. Patience. Patience is what water knows. It's time to recap. Soft, penetrates hard, and softest penetrates the hardest. These three words, softest, hardest, and penetrates, let me explore them just a bit. With softest, we have compassion, gentleness, and patience. With hardest, we get resistance, rigidity, control. Penetrates, I love this. When something penetrates, it transforms without force. Because of this, water is a chief and favorite metaphor for Tao and its practices. Teresa, any final thoughts?
I think back to what you mentioned recently about softness, and that softness is not passivity, and softness is courage. And those words, I think, I like how they settle in, and how we think about softness differently than what the culture tells us to think about. And I think that's a very helpful idea.
As a parent and as a child of parents, we know that the trauma can be beaten into us. We know that things can go wrong, and we know that we as parents can mess up. But I think that we can also have a way of learning from our mistakes. We learn to forgive, like water. It'll easily forgive us and start getting clean again. We can easily use this idea of renewal and yielding to not be so hard on ourselves. So I think that's all I have for you right now. Now it's time for our family-friendly rendering of verse 78, called Be Like Water. Water is soft and gentle, who wears down even the hardest mountains. It's easy to understand this, but few live it. The wise say, those who stay calm in hard times deserve to lead. And those who accept life's pain without lashing out, they are the truly strong ones. Water shows how true strength is always soft. So let's begin our conclusion. Let's remember just 3 quick but critical things. One is, you are mostly water. We are rivers, folks. A river goes through us. Second, our softest qualities are not our weaknesses. No, they are your way through any hard situation. Third, Tao is not a story, please, not a story of conquering others, but of returning to what you already are. Soft, pliable, flexible. That's how we were born. So ask yourself again, what are you thirsty for? And perhaps just for today, be like water, who in one refreshing moment after another is simultaneously and mysteriously the giver, the receiver, and the gift. This podcast is an original labor of patience and love, designed, written, and co-produced by many whose central voice is that Tao Te Ching is good news for today. Tao still speaks. Thank you, Teresa Aeschliman, for your voice. Audrey Davis, thank you for being our artist. Fortress Press holds the copyright for quotations from my Tao Te Ching translation. Thanks to you for your attendance in this class on Taoism. May your days begin in peace and become moist wombs for radical hope today.